Welcome to week 7, students. I want to start by congratulating all of you for successfully incorporating your companies. You've taken that major step and now your company exists on its own out here in the real world. What we're going to work on in the next few weeks is just tying up some loose ends and continuing to plan out our operations. By the end of this week, you need to have established your company identity. This is because you want to consistently tell the world who you are across all team members. We're going to submit an assignment called a company information document that contains your company name, mission statement, charity of choice, and logo. It's good to have these created beforehand, again, just so you have that same consistent message whenever you're going out and speaking with people. We also want to continue working on the business plan. This plan is telling everybody what your company wants to do and how you're going to do it. It's your plan, and once you have it all laid out, executing it is what you can work on. In the description, you'll find a link to a guide that will help you through the business plan. There's a few things that you have to include in it, and then everything else you can add extra. Again, you're just communicating exactly what it is you want to do with your company and how far you want to take that. All right, moving along, students, into our interview segment. This week, I had the pleasure of interviewing Ghalia Aamer, who is the founder and CEO of TalkMaze. She's a young entrepreneur who is also an alumni of the company program. She has a lot of insight to share with you about what it means to be an entrepreneur at such a young age, and also some tips to help you manage the stress around it and balancing everything else out in your life. Check it out. Hey Galia, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good too. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us here in the company program podcast this week. I know you have a lot of great insight for the students, a lot of great perspective to share. Lots of things to talk about. But before we get into all that, would you mind sharing with the students, a bit about who you are and your journey and the kinds of exciting things that you've done so far?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Ghalia. I'm a third-year business student at the University of Alberta, and I'm also the founder and CEO of TalkMaze, which is a startup that helps schools implement public speaking and debate training. My entrepreneurial journey began several years ago when I was 13 years old, and I started my tutoring business at that point. But then I actually also got involved with junior achievement, and I did the JA company program for 3 years throughout high school. And I continue to be involved in JA as an advisor and in other capacities. So JA was a super big part of my entrepreneurial involvement. These days, I'm mostly focused on building TalkMaze, quite involved in the startup world in Edmonton, Canada, and even abroad, and also studying full time at the U of A.
Yeah, pretty awesome. And it's always good to hear an alumni of any of the programs doing such exciting and big things. Even outside of the city, the country, so on. So you talked about your journey as an entrepreneur and how you got started when you were 13, right? So you have lots of experience in the startup space, and I wanted to ask, I know there's so many different things that you could point to, but what's one lesson that kind of stuck out to you that you learned on this journey as an entrepreneur?
That's a tough one because there's so many. But if I had to say one thing that comes to mind right now, it would be that you're never really qualified enough. You'll often feel like you don't have it figured out or you need to reach a certain milestone to get started. Like you might be thinking, I need to graduate to start a business or I need to have a degree to do something, but you can just get started. So get if you have a business idea, get started with your business. No one ever has it all figured out. You should just go ahead, get started, do what you can with the resources and circumstances that you have, and ask for help wherever you can. There are so many people who are willing to help you. So don't worry about having all the right training, having all the right knowledge or the experience. You'll never be experienced enough or qualified enough, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. It's a constant learning journey.
Yeah, 100%. Very well said. I agree with the fact there's no destination really in any of it. It's just like an ongoing thing. And there's like a million and one excuses not to do something. With students in company program, I love the role I work in because I'm able to see and speak with so many of these bright young students. And an excuse you commonly hear from that is that I'm too young or I don't know enough or I can only do it like after I reach a certain point, like after I graduate or have like X amount of years in a certain industry. But that's rarely true. Case in point, you, right, for example.
Yeah,
So,
I completely
um,
get.
yeah, no, I think that's great. I know it's a bad habit of mine to just be like, oh, I'll get to that later. It's like a form of procrastination, which is weird. Um, And then also, I was wanting to know in your journey as an entrepreneur. So there's many great lessons I'm sure you've learned. That being an example. But being an entrepreneur is really exciting too. There's so many cool things that you get to do only by walking that path. So, through Talk Maze or the Tune Tutoring Company or anything else you really got your hands involved in, is there kind of a memory that sticks out, something distinct that always somehow finds its way back to your mind?
Yeah, I would say that I kind of echo what you're saying about feeling too young and feeling like you're not credible enough. And when I started my tutoring company, I often felt that. I always recall this story of remembering like registering my business and calling up an agency to get my company registered, my tutoring company at the time when I was 13. And I was going through the registration process all fine. And then the person on the phone asked me what my date of birth was. And when I said 2001, he laughed at me on the phone. And that, like, in that moment, I again felt like I just wasn't credible enough, as if like me starting a business at that age was a joke to people and it wasn't credible. And the reality is, like, there are challenges like that they could feeling like you're not credible enough. And I'm grateful that I took that as a moment of learning and as a challenge that I wanted to overcome. And I started my company and I built my business and now I'm building my second business. But those moments always bring me back to like remembering that there are challenges. There are times when people might not think you're credible enough, but you have to keep working hard and keep building up whatever it is that you want to build and get the results and get there, because as much as you'll have people who are maybe not as supportive, you also have so many people who are more than willing to help, and you really have to surround yourself with that support network.
Yeah, 100% true. It's something that I can resonate a lot with too, and I know how I get because we're gonna be stuck on this topic too. But I agree. Like my how I rationalize it in my head with the whole age thing or any other kind of reason is that no matter what, if we're using the word credibility, right? No matter what, you're not going to be credible to someone in some capacity. There's going to be some reason that people are going to make up and hold against you for why they shouldn't support you or whatever. And like you said, I think it's true that the solution isn't so much about getting to a certain place or being a certain person. It's about kind of surrounding yourself and focusing on the people that do support you, that can see the value there. And that's not to say that there's not plenty to learn, right? There is, of course, like it's an ongoing journey there too, but it shouldn't be something that stops you on your journey. Whether it be through entrepreneurship or again, I know high school students, you're still going through school and maybe you have a job or just extracurriculars, just figuring everything out, and Gali, kind of on that topic, my next question was around balancing out a bunch of the things that are going on in your life, right? So even right now, you're still attending school in post-secondary for business, I believe you said, right? And you're balancing your business plus other things, and just even general like enjoying your life, right? So through your journey since like age 13 to present day, what were some of the things that I guess, what were some of your practices to keep that balance and to not go crazy or to stress yourself out too much?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't always been good at it. There are points in high school when running a business, being in school, being involved in extracurriculars, it became a lot and I wasn't managing it that well. But I think that I've learned a lot over the past several years in terms of balance. And I think it's something that students should try to keep in mind as early as they can, because otherwise it's very easy to burn out, especially if you're pursuing a venture, you're doing extracurriculars alongside school, and having some strategies in place is super helpful. So for me, I need to stay organized in terms of balancing everything. I need to make sure like I have a place of organization. And for me, that's my Google Calendar. Like if it's not in my calendar, I'm not there. Like if I end up missing a meeting and it wasn't in my calendar, that's not my fault. It's just because the person didn't send me a calendar invite. Like I need it in my calendar. That's my go-to. Because there's so much going on. In order for me to keep track of when my classes are, when my meetings are, when I'm hanging out with my friends, I need a place that can remind me of that, like what's going on. So that is important to me. And I've tried to also like block off, even if I'm hanging out with a friend, like block off that time I'm with a friend or this is my own like chill time, because it's also important to have that balance between work and life. So using my Google Calendar to also sometimes map out like when am I going to have my free time where I can't work, I can't block off any time for meetings in that period of time. So having those time blocks has been super helpful for me now. And also I guess to at some point like realizing there was always more you can do, but at some point like you have to stop. So some days I still struggle with this, but it's like finding a time in your day where it's like if it's like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. That or after that you don't want to work anymore. Kind of comes back to time blocks of that time where you're just going to spend time with family or spend time with friends, and make sure that you're actively making that time for your mental health as well. Is super important. And something that I realized recently is that it's important to check in and notice like what your personal red flags are. Like you can kind of see yourself going maybe into like going downhill, and you feel like you're going back into a cycle of just working and not taking care of yourself, and notice like what that is. Maybe you've stopped working out. Like I like to work out regularly. So when I realized that like these days, honestly, I haven't been working out as much. So that's a sign to me is like, okay, I need to get back into working out. Clearly there's something wrong. I'm focusing too much on work. So having like that sign can really help you keep track of yourself and like get yourself back on track when you feel like you're falling off track. So key tips would definitely be like find something to keep yourself organized, like a Google Calendar, make time for yourself as well and schedule that, and time for your friends and family. And then finally have little signs that can kind of let you know that you're going off track if you are.
Yeah, no, those are all very great points. Um, I'm glad you pointed out the red flag example specifically. Um, and I have another follow-up question with it. I want to see if I can articulate it right, but I also wanted to say, time management is a big thing as well. Staying organized, staying on top of it is like if there was a single secret ingredient to productivity, I'm guessing that's what it would be, but I'm no expert, right? But anyways, you were talking about the red flags, and I think that's a very important point too, especially if not at this point, as the students that are in the company program right now, they're transitioning into the next period of their life. In today's day and age, there's like almost an overabundance of opportunities, especially because so much is online now. There's no barriers to access, right? And that's a good thing, but what the temptation for some students might be is to bite off more than they can chew, to sign up for too many things, right? So with your red flags example, you talked about that's how you check yourself while you're already going through some things, while you already have your hands in some ventures. um, do you have any tips for kind of, I guess, being proactive in that sense and avoiding taking on more than you can handle? How do you gauge what your threshold is? How do you know how much you can handle at a given moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I I honestly, a lot of this stuff I'm figuring out as we go. I'm 20 years old in my third year. I just graduated high school in 2019, so not too far from many of you company program students. And one thing that I've figured out works for me is having something that basically like a criteria for how you're going to evaluate opportunities that come to you. So for me, I look at three different things when I'm looking at evaluating opportunities. First of all, is it something that I enjoy? Am I like I want to actually enjoy my life? So if I'm like even in a meeting or something, like I want to make sure it's enjoyable. So that's one thing. Is it enjoyable for me? The second thing is, does it add value to my life? So in the long run, like, is it going to help me personally or professionally? And then finally, does it add value to the world? So I want to make a positive impact with what I'm doing. So those are my three things that I'll look at. And there is an overabundance of opportunities. If you can't find opportunities, you can create opportunities, but there are opportunities everywhere you go. And it's about having your criteria to evaluate what serves you and what serves the world. So those are my personal three things that I look at. Is it enjoyable? Does it add value to my life? Does it add value to the world? But I think that every person should come up with their own personal three things that they're looking for. That way, it's not just like every commitment you're taking on, but even like decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis. You can quickly evaluate them based off like, does this really align with my values? Is this what I want? Is this what I'm looking for out of my life? And having that go to few questions that you can answer and then really see if something is worth your time or not has been really helpful for me. And I still do that because our time is limited and time is the most valuable resource we have. So being selective about opportunities is important as well.
Yeah, preach. Well said. I'd start clapping, but it's going to pick up on my microphone weird. I think that's a great system that you have, where you have three things that you base your decisions around, with picking up new opportunities. And that's honestly probably something I'm going to start using too, because I've fallen down that rabbit hole myself where I'm like, oh, I like doing different things. I like seeing different things. But as you get older, like for me, at least in high school, and I know in some of my conversations with current company program students, it's the same, that in high school sometimes it feels like there's a scarcity of opportunity, that there's not as much for you to do, and you want to do things because you want to learn learn and grow, make connections, open up new doors for yourself. But slowly, as you kind of leave your teenage years and into your, your 20s or your adult years or whatever the next stage of your life is, people are going to kind of want more from you, that they're going to want you to do more things. And so, it's not smart to be like me and just say yes, 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 and just do a bunch of these things, because it gets tired. You get tired really, really fast, right? And you burn yourself out, and then you're kind of out of commission for like a year, right? So, I guess proceeding with intent is important when you're picking your opportunities, having those three things, which would be different for everybody, I'm assuming, right? I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, and anyways, just kind of unfortunately we're wrapping up here a little bit. So another question I want to ask, it's kind of on a different topic, talking about entrepreneurship again. Ghalia, you're still an entrepreneur, and I wanted to ask you, as someone who's gone through the experiences, we have a lot of students in the program who, after this experience, they want to go on and start their own companies, right? Do you have any advice for these high school age students, or for people just leaving high school, in terms of starting their own companies?
Yes. First of all, please do it. That's a very important thing. I hear a lot of youth, like you mentioned earlier, just say that I'm going to do it after I graduate or I'll do it later. You can start now. You don't have to have a rapidly growing startup. Like you can start a business, even if you're working on it like 5, 10 hours a week. Just start putting in the time with the time that you have. Start it now. You don't have to be focused full time either. You have other commitments with school, but that doesn't mean you can start. So just go ahead and start it. That would be my main piece of advice. And then find your support network, find people around you. There are tons of organizations that are willing to help you, like Junior Achievement. You have tons of mentors there. Connect with your company program mentors, connect with other organizations. When I was 13, I connected with Business Link, which is a nonprofit that helps small businesses get started. And they were super helpful to me. They didn't care I was 13. It doesn't matter how old you are, you're a business owner. So get started and use the resources around you. Also, like the whole world is at your fingertips now that everything is online. You can learn about business online. You can learn about entrepreneurship online. You can just connect with people on LinkedIn. And more often than not, if you send a request, a personalized request explaining what your problem is, what you're looking for, people will respond to you on LinkedIn and say, yeah, sure, let's set up a Zoom meeting and I can help you out. There are so many resources around you. So just go for it and be resourceful with everything around you. I think that is so important as an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting up.
Yeah, no, very well said there too. And I think that's a great piece of advice. Honestly, there's so many specific things when you go on your journey, and so the biggest thing is just start. Just don't think about it too much. Just whatever that means to you, just go ahead and start. And thank you for answering all the questions here, Galia. Unfortunately, again, we have to wrap up here. But I wanted to ask if you had any final thoughts you want to share with the students, especially as an alumni or an entrepreneur yourself.
Well, final thoughts would just be to use your resources. And with that said, I'm also happy to connect with anyone who does watch this and has questions about business, post secondary, entrepreneurship, anything like that. I'm not much further from where you are in your journey, just a few years older. So please feel free to connect with me directly as well. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ghalia. I know during that interview I was taking notes, and I'm sure a lot of you took something important away from it as well. So let's just quickly recap on what we need to work on this week. We need to finalize our corporate identity. This contains a bunch of different elements such as your name, mission, charity of choice, as well as your logo. And we're going to submit all this information by the end of this company program week in the company information form. We also want to continue working on our business plan. Again, this is a statement of who your company is, what you want to do, and how you're going to do it. It's also a place where you can state some goals and say how far you want to take your company. That's due at the end of week 9, so we still have some time, but still I encourage all of you to get a head start on that. And those are all the overt assignments we have. Now I know this list is small, there's only 2 things on it, but I want to acknowledge the fact that I see all of you working incredibly hard to straighten out the operations of your companies. I see all the energy you put into planning your product, and a few teams have actually started to test to assemble them and see if it's something that works out or if they need to revise their production plan. It's really cool for me to see. So keep up the good work, get a head start on those assignments, and I'll see you all next week.